Notice of the meeting was sent. Notice of the meeting was sent to the Daily Record and the Citizen on January 3rd, 2025, and published on January 8th, 2025. Notice was also posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building and the Town of Boonton website. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Brianna, can we have a roll call?
Sure. Mayor Lynch,
Here.
Mr. Phelps,
Here.
Mr. Brewer,
Here.
Mr. Murray,
Here.
Mr. Kokar, Mr. Orlowski,
Here.
Mr. Schnitzler,
Here.
Mr. Supa,
Here.
Mr. Venturini,
Here.
Mr. Roble,
Here.
and Mr. Zamparano.
Here. Full attendance. Payment of bills. Brianna, are all the bills in order?
Yes, they are.
Can I have a motion to pay the bills? So moved, Brewer. Second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, everybody got a copy of the meeting minutes from the February 12th, 2025 meetings. Anybody have any comments? Seeing none, we'll accept the meeting minutes as presented. Okay, resolutions. We've got two resolutions today.
And if I can interject, everyone, thank you for your cooperation. There was a health issue in the Mullen family last week. And I want to particularly thank council for the applicants who worked with me in terms of getting changes back and forth, which we relayed to you. And I said to him, he was such a good egg that the next time he appeared before us, that I would move heaven and earth for him. I just didn't realize he would be here tonight.
Right.
In that regard, I should have known better. But I thank everyone for working with me to get it done, and
Okay.
we're all set, and it's been approved by the applicant, et cetera.
Okay, so that's resolution for application 2024-7-221 Fulton Street.
Right, and also for the following,
Okay,
okay? Well,
all right, so do we have, can I have a motion to approve resolution 2024-07?
So moved, Brewer. Second.
Can we have a roll call?
Sure. Mr. Brewer,
yes.
okay, Mr. Kokar.
I would.
Oh, I was absent. Mr. Orlowski,
Yes.
Mr. Supa,
Yes.
Mr. Venturini,
Yes.
Mr. Schnitzler,
Yes.
and Mr. Phelps.
Yes. Okay, the next up was resolution 2024-08, 100 Fulton Street. I have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Brewer. Second.
Can we have a roll call?
Mr. Brewer,
Yes.
Mayor Lynch,
Yes.
Mr. Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Orlowski,
Yes.
Mr. Supa,
Yes.
Mr. Venturini,
Yes.
Mr. Schnitzler,
Yes.
and Mr. Zamparano,
Yes.
and Mr. Phelps.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to public hearings. Next up is application 2025-01, 318 Monroe Street.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Sure.
Have a number of exhibits this evening. The board secretary requested that I bring it on the screen. Six.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, take your
Take
time.
your time.
We went quick, so you didn't have much time. Okay, I'm ready now. Okay.
319 Kelly LLC, a limited liability company, owner of the property subject of the application this evening. As a matter of introduction, I would first like to state that nothing new is proposed. So there's no new buildings, there's no new structures, no new pavement, nothing's new. So what you see there physically today is what we asked.
Could you, hit the mic? Sorry about that. Oh, you got it? Is it on? Okay. Push it till it's green.
I'm sorry. Should I start over?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. Let's
Okay,
start
well,
over.
let me start
Everybody
over.
can
At
hear.
least I had a practice. Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen Shepis. I'm the applicant's attorney. The applicant is 319 Kelly LLC, a New Jersey limited liability company, which is the owner of the property subject to tonight's application. The property has double frontage. It sits both on Monroe Street and Kelly Lane. It's 318 Monroe. There's a two-family dwelling on the property. And 319 Kelly Lane. That is a single-family dwelling. Tonight's request is for minor subdivision and related variances. I do bring to the board's attention due to recent amendments in the town's ordinance. In September of 2024, two-family dwellings are now permitted conditional uses in the R3A zone. As a result, we are requesting a D variance, a conditional use variance. So that being said, due to the
Okay,
fact
so this is a D
yes,
variance.
it is a
then.
D variance.
Okay.
And your board planner had identified that as such.
Okay,
And he enlightened me, and when I went through the new ordinances, I confirmed he was
okay,
correct.
thank you. So that means Bob and you can put stuff down and have a good evening. Okay,
Yeah, the nature of the conditional use variance is the fact that there's one condition in the ordinance, and that's for two-family dwellings in this zone, you're required to have 9,000 square feet of lot area. Presently, it complies, if you want to say it complies, it doesn't, it complies in overall lot area, but there are two separate principal structures on the property today. So the property as it exists today has a number of nonconformities with regard to setback, coverage, and most strikingly, the fact that you have two principal uses, two principal structures on one lot. So the nature of tonight's request is to simply subdivide the property into two basically equal-sized lots, one continuing to remain fronting on Monroe Street, one continuing to remain on Kelly Lane. We have a witness for you this evening. His name is William Zimmerly. Mr. Zimmerly is a licensed professional land surveyor. He prepared the plans that are subject of tonight's hearing. So he's going to be most likely our only witness. We have a number of exhibits which Mr. Zimmerly can assist me with and verify the authenticity. So without further ado, I ask that Mr. Zimmerly be sworn and then place the credentials on the record.
Sir, could you stand, please? You swear that the testimony you're about to offer tonight, in response to the question from this board, well as members of the public, will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
With respect to your professional licensing, is your professional license still in good order?
Yes, it is.
And with respect to your recent experience over the course of the last year or two, have you had occasion to testify either before this board or other Morris County boards?
Not Morris County, no.
What would be your principal area?
Well,
meaning-
I don't find myself testifying before a lot of boards, but the last one would have been fair law.
Okay. And again, your professional licensing is in good shape, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So let's just move to accept the
Yes.
gentleman as a expert in this particular field.
So moved, Brewer. Yeah.
Thank you.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Okay, well, the first question that we would like to address for you this evening, and Mr. Zimmerly will assist me in this, is how do you end up with two houses on one lot? Now, the records don't disclose a use variance to permit that. And the two structures were built, one was built before zoning and one was built after. So I have an exhibit that I provided to the board secretary. It's entitled Certification of Zoning and Use History. And it walks you through the records associated with this property in the town. So I've taken the liberty of pre-marking in this exhibit A1. I have enough for everybody on the dais, and that's up on the screen. So if I may,
Sure.
hand those out. Oh, it's the other,
It's the other one,
yes.
the first one.
Could be. That's it. If you need more, I have one more.
We're good.
Okay, good. Any more? Okay, well, the first order of business was to find out how this occurred. So we went back into the records of the town of Boonton. The town clerk was very helpful. I submitted Oprah requests and she provided prompt responses. So in paragraph 3 of the certification, I point out the obvious that the first zoning ordinance of the town was adopted on December 19th, 1922. I provide that correspondence from Mr. Osborne back in 2005, where he confirmed that. And then likewise, I have a copy of the first ordinance. What I point out next is that the property was in a B zone, a B residential zone. And unlike the standards that we have today, there was a density based on lot areas. So you could have multifamily dwellings. And in this particular zone, you were permitted up to 18 families on 1 acre. So you divide up the acreage by the number of units, and that's how you quantified your density. Now, I would point out that this zoning ordinance in 1922 predated the first statewide planning act, the 1953 Planning Act. So there really was no guidance in place on a statewide level. And this is one of the earlier ordinances that you see in Morris County. Montville didn't adopt their first ordinance till 52, Lincoln Park 41, and mostly it was in the late 40s and 50s. So this precursor of all the other towns in the area had a density which was substantially greater than what prevailed after the 53 Planning Act was adopted. All right, the next I pointed out is that in paragraph 5, that the records from the tax assessor confirmed. Oh, I'm sorry. In paragraph 5, I went through the subsequent ordinances after the first one in December of 1922, and I was provided all the ordinances, either zoning or otherwise, right up through 1939, just to see if there were any changes. And as I provided for in my certification, there were numerous ordinances. Most of them dealt with sewer systems and peddler regulations and paving of roads, vacating rights of way, accepting roads, etc. But there was only one ordinance that amended the zoning ordinance between 1922 and 1939. And that was an ordinance that modified the permitted uses in the industrial zone. Previously, the manufacture of soap was prohibited. Somebody must have wanted to make soap in the town of Boonton, so they modified the ordinance to permit soap manufacture in the industrial zone. So based on that, it's clear that the 22 ordinances which prevailed at the time, minimum lot area was required was 2,420 square feet for one single family dwelling. So that takes care of the aspect of when zoning came into effect and what the impacts were on the property. Then we go into the records of the tax assessor, Board of Taxation, and then likewise the Morris County Clerk with regard to these properties. In paragraph 7, I note that based on the tax records from the county, the house at 319 Kelly Lane was built in 1922. So next to that certification is Exhibit C, is a copy of the tax record with the section noted. And when you see pictures of the house, you'll be satisfied that it looks like it was built in 1922. The records also reflect that the two-family dwelling that is at 318 Monroe Street was built in 1930. And then we go on to see how these lots were created and how it was that the two houses existed. In paragraph 8, I note Exhibit D being an 1872 deed from James Holmes to James Semis and William DeHart for the property at Kelly Lane. The description of the property references the fact that it is 75 feet deep and approximately 50 feet wide. That is next to the certification as Exhibit D. And then I also have a couple other deeds in that chain of title where this 75-foot depth and 50-foot frontage on Kelly Lane listed as an alley carries through right up and through the 1930s, 1940s. The next exhibit on that certification is Exhibit D, which is the deeds in the chain of title for 318 Monroe Street. The lot is described as being 50 feet wide and 125 feet deep. It first appears in the deed from February 10th, 1869, once again for James Holmes, who apparently owned the entire block, to James Senis. That deed eventually came out of his estate to Minerva, and that deed was dated in August of 1920. So that deed is also attached. And then also to clarify any questions you may have, I retrieved an old copy of the tax map. Unfortunately, I didn't get a date, but you can see that that's Exhibit F. So if we can go to Exhibit F, you could see that the tax map showed the lots as separate. Now, we're proposing a different configuration. No, it's at the very, very end of that last page. There you go. So as borne out by the tax map, the property was two lots, and you can see one of them was 50 feet wide, 125 feet deep, fronting on Monroe, and the other was 50 feet wide, 75 feet deep. So they were not equal in size. We are proposing to equalize them, but as you notice, if you take a look at the four lots on the corner of Kelly Lane and Monroe, right over there, Monroe and Holmes, you can see that they're all 5,000 square feet as well. So you have the four lots there that existed back then that were basically 5,000 square feet, being approximately 50 by 100. So we're proposing a new lot line to emulate that lot line. It wouldn't line up with the rear line of the adjoining lots next to us, but it would bring the lot into a greater conformance of what exists out in the neighborhood presently. Okay, so that's the history of the zoning and the history of the lot. The next item up for you would be Exhibit A2, which is entitled Lot Area and Use Certification. So if we could ask that be brought up, I think it's probably the second one on the list. So I have, it's going to be an easier trip home without all this paper.
Yeah.
In order to prepare A2 to give you a overview of the pattern of development in the neighborhood in support of the variances, I first researched all of the records of the town of Boonton, the Morris County Board of Taxation, and also the Morris County Clerk. Likewise, we have photographs of the houses that are referenced, and based on the tax records, we're able to identify whether they were single family, two family, or the like. Now, what we've done is I prepared a summary as noted on that page. So I could ask the board secretary if you could just scroll that up. So rather than having 22 exhibits, I listed the documents by page numbers on the certification so that you could draw reference to the page numbers and see the supporting documentation. It's summarized in the table so that you could see the lot area pattern that exists as well as the uses that exist. So as you note, we have the houses listed as lots 1, 2, 3, and 4. You have lot areas that range between 5,000 and 10,000 square feet. The subject property is 10,000 square feet, which is the largest on the block. And then you see predominantly the lots are somewhere around 5,000 square feet, some a little larger, some a little smaller. And it's striking that the vast majority of the houses on the block 75, are two family, as you can see. And based on the tax records, we didn't knock on doors, but we do have photographs that seem to corroborate that as well. Okay, so that's what's going out there on the block. The next series of photographs or next exhibit we have for you is exhibits, photographs of the houses on Kelly Lane. So Mr. Zimmerly is familiar with these, so I'm gonna ask that this be marked as A3. So we could jump over to the next exhibit. Let's see, photos of Kelly Lane exhibit. Yeah, that's the one. There you go. So as those are being handed out, I'm going to ask Mr. Zimmerly a few background questions. Now, Mr. Zimmerly, you've been to the property that's subject to tonight's application, right?
Yes, it's been a while since I've been there, but yes,
And you've been down Kelly Lane in
Yes,
order to
yes.
finish your survey?
yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with the houses that are situated along Kelly Lane and Kelly Lane itself?
Yeah, pretty much, sure.
So I'm going to ask you to take a look at exhibit A3, which is a series of photographs.
Okay.
You recognize what's depicted in those photographs?
I recognize most of them. I don't recognize all of them. Like I said, it's been a couple of years. I spent time there. But
Okay.
yes.
Could you
yeah.
generally describe Kelly Lane as a driveway, roadway, or way of access?
Well, it's a way of access for a number of houses, no doubt about that. It doesn't really look like a roadway. It looks more like a driveway.
I'd ask that the board secretary, if you could just roll us up through the photos. Now, Mr. Zimmerly, based on your recollection, is it fair to say that the photos that we see here tonight reflect the conditions of Kelly Lane as you remember them,
Yes,
and the houses that are adjacent?
yes.
Now, take a look at photo 7. That's the last on the last sheet.
Okay.
All right, now, it's noted on the bottom of photo 7, 319 Kelly Lane. You recognize that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, is that the back end of the property that's subject to tonight's application?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that's the house that fronts on Kelly Lane as compared to the one that fronts on Monroe Street.
Correct.
Now, having been to the property, is there a way to drive from this section of the property where this house is on Kelly Lane to Monroe Street? Is it like a through driveway or anything?
No.
Okay, so is it fair to say that the two houses are separate from one another?
Yes, they are.
So, and is it fair to say that this house on Kelly Lane fronts and is accessed exclusively from Kelly Lane?
Yes,
And similarly, the house on Monroe Street is situated on Monroe Street and is accessed exclusively through Monroe Street.
correct.
So even though the two houses are on one lot, it's not as though they're working in any way together, one accessory to the other, or somehow anything other than two separate houses fronting on two separate streets.
That's correct.
Okay.
You'd never know they were part of the same property if you didn't have some information on it.
Okay, so now let's talk about your subdivision plan. Let's talk about how you're proposing to subdivide this. I don't know if we have that. Do we have that on a way to bring that up on the screen for the benefit of the public? Oh, that's wonderful.
Is it one of these files here or?
No, it would be part of the original submission.
Yeah, I wouldn't have that electronically.
All right, well, Mr. Zimmerly, you have the plan in front of you. Perhaps you can just hold it up for the benefit of the board, or I know everybody has the plans in front of them. So let's talk about what you're proposing in the way of the configuration of the lot. So tell us how large the lot is that exists today, what kind of frontage you have, and what the setbacks are on the lot.
Okay, the entire parcel as it is today is 10,053 square feet. It's about 50 feet wide by 200 feet deep. Yeah. And geez, what else can I tell you about it? The house is not conforming to existing setback requirements, the main house, in terms of front yard and side yard. And with our proposed rear yard, we will be in conformance. And the house on Kelly Lane also does not comply with front yard and side yard zoning requirements, but will comply with the rear yard requirement.
Okay, so is it fair to say that the new proposed lot line in the middle of the property as it exists today would not create any new non-conforming conditions as it relates to rear yard setback?
Correct.
All right, so now let's talk about the minimum lot area required for the zone and what's existing and what's proposed. What's required?
Okay, the minimum lot area for a two-family house is 9,000 square feet. And we are proposing 5,000 square feet for that parcel. And the minimum lot area for a single-family house is 6,250 square feet. We're proposing just over 5,000 square feet for that lot.
Okay, now there's several nonconformities proposed with regard to coverages and FAR. So why don't you walk us through that? Tell us how that ties into the lot area.
Okay. Well, let's go to the single-family house first, where the maximum building coverage is 22%. And with the subdivided lot, we're proposing it be, whoops. Where am I here? 14.6%. Well under the requirement or the maximum. And the maximum building coverage for a two-family house is 17%. And for that, we are proposing, or rather, I have that right? Two-family 17%, proposing 25.4%.
Okay, now that percentage of 17 is based on the anticipated minimum lot area of 9,000 square feet. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's correct.
So with the smaller lot, the smaller coverage. Is that fair to say?
That would be reasonable, yes.
Okay, so if you could keep moving along the list of zoning issues.
Okay. Maximum pervious, the maximum floor area ratio, is that what we're talking about here? For a one-family house is 0.39. And we're proposing 0.15 or 0.146, which would be acceptable or with not, it would be in conformance. And the maximum floor area for a two-family house is 0.29. And we're proposing 0.38, which would be a variance.
Okay, now again, that FAR is based upon the size of the lot.
That would make sense, sure.
So if we did something other than dissect the lot down the middle and create two lots of 5,000 square feet, is it fair to say that by manipulating the lot line, you could make that number come down?
Yes.
Keep going.
Okay, minimum floor area of one family house is 900 square feet per ordinance. And what we have existing is 738 square feet.
Okay, so that house is the one that's on Kelly Lane, correct?
Correct.
And it's smaller than what the ordinance requires.
That's right. And the minimum floor area of a two-family house is 1,200 square feet. And we have about 1,900 square feet. So that is in conformance with the requirements.
Okay. It also appears that there is a requirement for on-site parking. Now, in my review of the photographs, doesn't appear there's any parking for 318 Monroe Street. Is that fair to say?
That's correct.
But there is at least 2 parking spaces for the house on Kelly Lane.
Right,
So that would comply with the regulation.
correct.
Okay. All right, I don't have anything further, Mr. Zimmerman.
Okay, I'll open to the board members who have questions of this witness. So just on it, so when these houses were built, they were 2 separate lots.
That's the way it appears, yes.
And then at some point,
Some
they got
point,
merged.
common ownership, there was common ownership somewhere along the lines, and it looked like that happened sometime in the 30s.
Okay,
And you know, it's very interesting. The question came up in my mind as how this merged. So I forwarded to your attorney a copy of the 1967 opinion of the New Jersey Supreme Court in the case, which basically declared lot merger. And that's the Lochner versus Campoli case, wherein you had undersized lots that were created by way of a file map before the 1953 Planning Act. And what the New Jersey Supreme Court declared in that case, and what's inferred, is where you have undersized contiguous lots, and at least one of them is vacant, that by operation of law, in order to further the purposes of zoning, by having lots that comply with the lot area requirement, that those lots automatically merge for zoning purposes. Now, that declaration was made in 1967. Subsequent, there was a case out of the appellate division, Cicciarelli, and I forwarded it also to your attorney, where back-to-back lots or L-shaped lots even don't merge because they have frontage on different streets. Now, how this happened, it could have very well been an act of the tax assessor just decided from tax purposes, he would combine it as one owner, and that as a result, you ended up with one lot rather than two. But as you can see from Exhibit A1, clearly when Mr. Holmes sold the first lot off in 1869, 2 years after the town of Boonton was established, right? It was a separate lot held by one person. And then subsequently, one of the other lot was purchased by the same man, Mr. Semmis, and his partner, Mr. DeHart. Mr. Semmis eventually dies, his estate sells one lot off. And somewhere along the line, you end up with unanimity of title and eventually a lot merger.
Yeah.
From what we see here in the records that I've presented, it's clear that there were two houses, one on each lot at one time, and then somewhere subsequent to that. And it's borne out by the tax map. As you see from the tax map, Exhibit F on Exhibit A1, it was shown on the tax map as two separate lots.
Okay.
Now, the question presented is what makes most sense in order to subdivide this? And actually, when Mr. Zimmerly, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Zimmerly, presented me with the first draft of the subdivision plan, he went back to the original lot configuration, which was 50 feet wide, 75 feet deep for the house on Kelly Lane, and 50 feet and 125 deep for the house on Monroe Street. Now, the applicant has really no preference over the lot configuration. We could live with either one. It seemed to make sense in light of the existing pattern of lot areas on the block to go with the 5,000 square foot, just in case anybody wanted to try and expand the house on Kelly Lane. It was more lot area and to make the lots more uniform. But certainly if the board would prefer to either eliminate or minimize the FAR variance for the two-family and the building coverage for the two-family, we could certainly make the lot on Monroe Street bigger and make that restore us to the original lot lines.
Okay.
So that's a thought if it's preferred.
Mr. Shepherd, are the two houses occupied currently?
Yes, they are. We have the applicant, he'll testify. They're both fully occupied.
Okay.
And we have some photographs of the house on Monroe Street, just in case somebody said, we want to see whether or not it's really two-family or whether. So we have some detailed photos to show the infrastructure.
Okay. If they weren't occupied, my brain goes to bring it into conformity, the elimination of a structure would actually achieve the ordinance.
Oh, that would work.
But from a development perspective, I can understand why there's a lack of desirability of eliminating lots. It's kind of like cutting bedrooms.
Yeah. And plus, when you look at the tax map and you see the pattern of development, if you went with two 5,000 square foot lots, you have several lots on that block that are, and you can also see that from Exhibit A2, where you have lots of 5,000, 4,891, 4,800, then 5,300, and the list goes on and on. Well, I would say the vast majority of the lots are below the minimum lot area.
Okay.
Now, you've got to remember, this was all laid out in 1869. So that's-
Any other questions? I'll turn it over to our professionals. Any questions of this witness and his testimony? This, there you go.
Hi, my name is Janini, town engineer. I know you mentioned before there is no site improvements being proposed, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I understand there is no car access between Monroe Street and Kelly Lane. But is there any division between the lots as of right now, like landscape, a fence or anything?
No,
Is there anything that's being proposed in the future or?
not that I'm aware of.
Fence that separates the lot.
There's fences that separate our property, this subject property, the side properties next door, but not between the two houses. Right?
I didn't see on the survey, that's why I asked. So, because I do see a fence here on the right side that, I don't know, it looks like, enclosement
Yeah, that's the neighbor's fence.
that is coming through the proposed lot.
Which fence are you talking about? I don't see that.
There is a square that looks like a fence.
Oh, there was like a dog pen or something like that there. I'm not sure if it's still there or not. It was there at the time when I did the original survey. I think it's still there. Imagine that will be removed.
Not if they have a dog.
Well.
Just two things.
Straddle the lines.
Oh, we're in.
Oh, I see.
So it's got to be removed.
I just have two things. One is just to underscore Mr. Shepard's comments, Graham Meadows, the board planner. To underscore Mr. Shepard's comments regarding the proposed adjustments to the, or alternatives to the configuration of the lots. I appreciate his response. Maybe an opportunity to reduce the degree of deviation from the requirements of the ordinance. That's something for the board to consider. And the second is, I just wanted to ask the applicant if they have any contemplation or consideration for future accessory structure uses, such as a shed or any other thing. Given the coverage limitation that we're at or the other things, something to consider.
The applicant doesn't have any interest in adding any additional structures to the lot that's out of conformance. The one on Kelly Lane, there seems to be more coverage permitted based on the size of the lot and the improvement, so I would leave the door open for that.
One more question, sorry, I'm gonna.
Don't even. We don't know what's going on.
Yeah, don't touch that.
Existing topography. I understand there is no contours to the plans, and that's fine, but can you just, let us know what the current site doing as of right now, with drains towards Morrow Street or Kelly Lane, private? Do you have any idea?
Drainage?
Yes.
No, I have no idea what the drainage does on the property. It's a pretty flat lot. I'm sure there is some slope to it, but I don't know what it is.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, that's it, and again, if there is any future improvement, then we have to submit it.
Yeah, they have to.
An application, anything like that.
Okay. All right. Yes, go ahead. All right, I'm gonna open it up to the public for anyone who has questions of this witness on his testimony. Just to be clear, it's this witness. You'll have a chance later on. If you're just gonna give comments, you'll have a chance later on to do that. So, yes, come forward and state your name.
My name is Lori Sula, at 314 Kelly Lane, and it's number. There's 2 parking spaces.
Yeah, we're not proposing any parking. I think Mr. Shepis was stating that there's probably room for 2 cars there existing in the existing driveway right now.
We're gonna try.
It's pretty tough to tell. It's really not very well defined. It's a gravel driveway.
Is it to the right of the building? Is it to the left of the building?
It's to the right of the building.
To the right of the building. So if I'm standing at the building, it's to the right of the building?
Yeah, it's between the house and the fence is where the existing driveway is now. No, if you're talking about Kelly Lane
Yeah.
and you're facing the house on Kelly Lane, it's to the right of the house.
Oh, to the right of the house?
Yes.
Yeah, to the left of the building, standing at the house.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't see it ever being used as 2 cars there. They don't park there.
Where do
And
they
there
park?
is water right there,
Uh-huh.
and there is a water main there.
Uh-huh.
I'm also on Kelly Lane, and this might not be the opportunity, because I just want to ask you where the parking was. But there is a shared agreement on the lane as far as the water lines and sewer lines, maintenance of the lane.
Mhm.
It's not a driveway, it is a lane.
Mhm.
So that's where the water line is. There's no gravel, there's no parking, it's actually ground, and that's where all the flooding, you asked about the water, that's where the water is, right there. But I just wanted to know where those two parking spaces are, because they're not there.
Well, when I've worked on the property, that's where I pulled in. I just pulled right in the driveway there. So I mean, there is a driveway there, whether or not it's an
So you park on
official.
grass. And there's no frontage, so anything in front of the property is the lane. So
Okay.
that's what there's no, I asked for clarification and I don't see it.
Okay,
May I ask
Yeah.
this lady a quick question?
sure.
Ma'am, I note on Mr. Zimmerly's plan that he shows water and sewer lines in Kelly Lane. Are those municipal water and sewer lines?
That I don't have the answer to.
Okay. Do you pay water bills to the
I
town of
will
Boonton?
tell you that we have an agreement that says that all the parties, and that would be 314 Kelly Lane, 3 Kelly Lane, 315 Kelly Lane, and 319 Kelly Lane, all recognize that the property that is adjacent to our properties and between our properties is the lane. And we agree that it's categorized as a road. We have a right-of-way easement that no one can park there. It has to be used for travel. I've actually, this might not be, again, the time to be talking about it, but I have already requested assistance from the codes department, the town, to get them to enforce the right-of-way easement, because it's not a driveway. It's a road, and as we stand right now, I can show you pictures. I have 2 drivers, most of the time 3 drivers at my home, 3 vehicles. We can't back out of our property because people block us in by
Okay, let's,
by
so-
parking in on the lane.
I hear, let's get through the next, and then we'll have your opportunity and we can talk about this.
But ma'am, is it municipal water that serves your house?
Yes,
Okay, and do you
I
have,
think so. I don't know 100%. I
And-
know I've paid the water bill.
okay, and you have municipal sewer at your house as well?
Yes, and it says in this agreement that we are all responsible for sewer, water, maintenance of the lane, and the easement of the lane.
Okay, now.
It is on file with the town.
Now, my investigation disclosed that there's a municipal water and municipal sewer line down Kelly Lane and all the houses are tied into it. I mean, is that your understanding? ma'am?
All I know is we're all responsible for it. So there was a water main break on 319. It was at that property between the 2 properties of 319 and 3 Kelly Lane. We were all responsible for it. And it was where the previous occupant would park her car on the grass. And we also had flooding. So
Okay, let's get through this and then, but we're gonna address it, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have a question of this witness and his testimony?
You think on Mark Ballas, 315, the roadway across the street from the lots in question. You commented there was no plans for, I guess, development at this point. Is that what I heard correctly?
We're not proposing to build anything at this time. Just what
Okay.
you see is what you get.
In your proposal, how do I say it? What if, can the mind get to, what are the possibilities for future expansion? Just because you don't have that to now, tomorrow, what is allowed?
So, let me explain. So,
Yeah.
because they've got pre-existing non-conforming type things, if they were to build something there, they would have to come back to us and put in an application to do that. So we're not approving any expansion here, if we were to approve this. So if they were to come, obviously build a bigger house, they're gonna have to come back to us.
Makes sense.
Yes,
The house across the street, and I was allowed to put a shed.
yes.
In my backyard.
Yeah, they're in the same, the house on Monroe Street already is oversized, so they would have to come back here.
I would also point out that Kelly Lane does not appear to be a public road, even though there's municipal water and sewer. And at minimum, if thought was made to construct anything apart from setbacks, which you probably couldn't meet, you'd have to
Can't
get
meet
section 36 relief for construction or building permit on a lot that doesn't front on a public road. So they'd be before the board in that capacity.
Good luck if you want to build a shed.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can you just, I'm sorry, can you just turn the button on the microphone? I don't know if it's on or not. Yeah.
I'll just talk loud.
Okay.
Okay. so-
AV problems.
Button, not the
Oh,
mic.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's on. It's
Oh,
on.
okay. Ashley Carrion. So I have a question. You said that this application is just to subdivide the property and there is no plan to build on the property, but the letter to the residents states that this application is requesting that all future variances be waived for this property. I read that as it's a free for all once you subdivide. You can then build whatever you want and you don't have to abide by any of our ordinances. And I can tell you right now with the parking comment, I had the privilege of living at both Kelly Lane and Monroe Street, and there is enough parking on that entire property, which includes 3 residences. There is enough parking for 1 spot on Kelly Lane, and that is it.
Now, ma'am, I have the notice in front of me and I'm going to read the line that I think you're referring to and correct me
Please,
if I'm, yeah,
clarify.
yeah. It says, in addition, the applicant will request any other variance, waiver, exception, or approval as may be deemed necessary by the planning board of the town of Boonton in order to secure approval of all plans, plats, and application submitted. Is that the line you were thinking of?
And it says no.
Oh, and then it says no further notice will be given as to this additional relief that may be required.
Yeah, that's not giving them a free for all.
Yeah.
No, that's.
wanted to make sure.
No, exactly. And we appreciate that. We will not let that get
Yeah,
approved.
just for clarification, because I think it's a legitimate question. If we were here tonight and the board pointed out, a board planner pointed out that they would like to see the line in a different location and it necessitated some kind of modification that invoked a new variance, then we would ask the board to consider that. But we're not asking, I mean, it depends. If the board feels that that's more appropriate, then that may modify the request. But nothing new would be built as part of this application.
Okay, any other questions of this? Sure.
I'm Mike Sutton from 319 Kelly Lane, and I'm wondering why you want to subdivide if you don't want to build on it.
It's always easier to either sell the property or develop property in the future if it's separate lots. Right now, it's a non-conforming use. Anything that's done there would require a D1 use or a D2 use variance. Because of the use being multiple principal structures, nothing could be done as relates to any kind of improvements or even sale of one house versus the other. So from a land use perspective, it's better to have one house on one lot.
Yeah, for development, that makes sense.
Well, not
For
necessarily.
future development.
I don't know what the plans are, but certainly nothing this evening is being requested.
All right, that's all.
Nicole DeSalvo, town resident. I would just like the board to know that there was a posting on Zillow listing that they already had these variances over 6 months ago. And also letting
So
prospective
this
buyers
isn't the right
know.
time for this. You're
Okay.
gonna have the opportunity. This is only for questions of that gentleman there. So I'm gonna open it up for what you're saying, so you can come back up and say that. Just not the right time.
I'm trying to figure out a way I can ask it of him.
You don't need to. You're gonna get the opportunity to say it.
Hi, my name is Jeremy McMaster. I live on Monroe Street. You mentioned expanding the lot on Kelly Lane with perhaps future expansion of the home since it's in non-conformance as far as square footage. Is that correct?
Well, one of the gentlemen asked whether or not that was something that was planned. I can't commit to it one way or another. It may very well stay just the way it is forever.
So it seems like there's more of an emphasis in expanding the current lot with that intention. So I would say it would make more sense to follow the lot lines that are already in place. That would limit them from expanding in the future. So that would be
Okay.
my input on that lot.
All right. Again, everybody, this is for questions of this gentleman. You're going to get the opportunity to make your comments and give us your opinions. Anyone have a question of this gentleman? Seeing none, I'll close it to the public and see if Mr. Shepherd has another.
Yes, only one other witness, Mr. Zimmerly, thank you for your participation in tonight's presentation.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, we'll see you. Don't leave the room just in case something comes up.
Hang
All
on
right.
there.
Don't leave the state either.
Yeah.
All right, our next witness is the applicant's primary member, Shakil Muhammad. Mr. Muhammad, why don't you come up and join me? I have a few questions for you. I think it's always important when you have a non-conforming issue, why don't you come over here, you can take Mr. Zimmerly's seat. As to establish that the two-family is lawfully existing. Now, of course, we have the tax records, show the house was built in 1930. Have the zoning record showing that the density at the time was 18 units per acre. But I had Mr. Muhammad take some photographs of the house. So if I could ask the board secretary to take us to the fourth of the series of exhibits. Now, Mr. Muhammad, you went on a photo investigation for me, did you not? And you took some pictures of the house? It's the next exhibit.
You swore him in?
Oh, I'm so sorry, I
Yeah.
forgot. Yeah, I haven't sworn in.
Sir, could you have your name and address for the record?
Yeah, my name is Shakil Mohammed. My address is 1 Highview Court, Montville, New Jersey.
Now, do you swear that the testimony you're about to give in response to your attorney's questions, to questions which might be posed to you by members of the board or by members of the public, will be the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, it's the one that has the electric meters.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Muhammad, can you state your relationship to the applicant entity 319 Kelly LLC?
I am the co-owner of the.
Co-owner. Okay, are you authorized to be here tonight and give testimony in support of this application?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Could you speak up, sir?
Yeah, yeah.
Make sure everybody in the back can hear you.
Mr. Shepherd, can you clarify what file is
It
that?
would be the one entitled, two-family house exhibit.
I'm not seeing that here.
Let's see, photo array, Kelly Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one.
Gotcha.
Okay, good. Okay, you're authorized to be here on behalf of the applicant entity?
Yes,
Okay, very good. Now, I asked you to take some photographs of the house at 318 Monroe Street. Is that fair to say?
yes,
And you took photographs, and we have an exhibit here this evening, which I'm going to mark as A4. I'm going to ask you to take a look at A4. And I'm going to ask you if you recognize what's depicted in it.
Yeah.
And turn through all the pages. And you recognize the photo as an A4?
yeah.
Okay, could you tell us what they depict?
There are the electric meters.
Well, they're the photos of 318 Monroe. Is that fair
Yeah,
to say?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so just give the board members a moment to catch up with the first of exhibit A4. And for the benefit of the public, A4 is up on the screen. We'll walk through the photos. Okay, very good. Does everybody have one?
Yep.
Okay, that's. All right, Mr. Muhammad, let's talk about the house at 318 Monroe Street. Now, I direct your attention to the first photograph, numbered 1, in the exhibit A4 that's here this evening. You recognize what's depicted in the photo?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us what it is.
Say 318 Monroe with two doors, with the two apartments, one on the left, one on the right.
You heard
Yeah.
my representation to the board and the public that this is a two-family house?
Yes,
Built circa 1930?
yeah,
Okay, So let's walk through the photographs. Tell us what we see.
Yeah, so the first one is the front elevation. And the second picture is the two electric meters for 2A and 2B, two apartment. And I have the gas meters. And the heat different for the.
Looks like a water meter. Is that
Yeah,
a
water meter, yeah, that's water meter. And.
You have two different water meters,
Yeah.
one for each unit?
Yeah. And then the next one, we have the gas tank, each for 2A and 2B different.
Okay, so each unit has their own heating system?
Yeah.
Now, I see that large cylindrical object sitting there in the basement. Looks like an oil tank. Is that
Yeah,
an oil tank?
that's a light tank.
Okay. Keep going.
So one more oil tank. So, also, for the other.
Okay. That's another oil tank.
Yeah,
So each unit has its own oil
Oil
tank,
tank.
own heat system, electric and
yeah,
water.
water,
Okay, and both units connected to the municipal sewer system?
yes.
Okay, so let's talk about the units themselves. Are they one above the other? Are they side by side?
They are side by side.
Side by side. So is there any access between unit on the right and unit by the left?
And no, not from upstairs. You need
Okay.
to go in the basement to access the unit.
So the units are totally separate from one another?
Yes,
They each have their own front doors?
yes,
Okay, and likewise, to the best of your knowledge, was this house built just the way it is as a two-family?
yes,
Now, you heard me make a representation on behalf that all of the units, this two-family as well as 319 Kelly Lane are all rented, occupied, right?
yes.
Okay. I don't have any further questions.
Okay. I will open it to the board members. Any questions of this witness?
I have a question.
Yes.
So you have two families living in a house, and where do they park?
On the street. Yeah.
Any other questions from board members?
Yeah, quickly, when did you acquire the property?
This is 4 years ago,
So 2021?
2020. Yeah, around 2020, 22.
Okay.
I don't have the exact date, but around that time.
And when you acquired the property, can you share any intention of what you desired to do with it?
Just an investment, it was just to rent the property.
Okay, so based upon the existence of the two structures on the single lot, which is odd.
Yeah.
I'm sure you were aware of that when you acquired it.
Yes,
What brings you in today as opposed to shortly after you acquired the property?
just like, the accessibility, easy to sell or easy to rent, all that stuff.
Do you have any current plan to expand, develop,
No,
or provide any other improvement to the properties?
no.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for board members? I'll turn it over to our engineer and planner. No questions. Okay, I'm gonna open it up to the public for any questions of this witness about his testimony. Okay, seeing none, I'll close that portion to the public. Mr. Shepis?
One of the items that I'd ask everybody to take a look at is the Morris County Planning Board aerial photograph. I use these in like all my applications, point that they no longer provide this free service, so. It was funny, I got a call from Joe Burrell with the county planner. We don't do that anymore. You've asked to put in the aerial photos. But they're very helpful because it's based on the county GIS. And it's also overlays the municipal lot line, the lot lines and the street lines. And when you see this thing lay out, there's so many different ways you could slice this pizza. And, maybe it makes more sense to go back to the original lot line and bring that in, but then you end up with the smallest lot on the block. Now, there are other lots in the immediate vicinity that are that small, but it seemed to me to make more sense to keep the lots more or less equal with other lots on the block. And you can see the 4 lots that are sitting over there sandwiched between Monroe Street, Kelly Lane, and Holmes Street. that those are 5,000 square foot lots. And when you look at the use history on that, they're predominantly two families. So the question is how do you best lay this out? And, you know, you can make arguments for one or the other. I mean, you could make an argument that to keep the lot lines exactly the same as the lots immediately on either side of 318 Monroe makes more sense, because then you have a continuous rear line in common with all the lots. And does that mean anything? I don't know, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Or does it make more sense from a zoning standpoint, for harmony with the pattern of development in the neighborhood, to stick with the 5,000 square foot lot as proposed here by Mr. Zimmerly? Now, one benefit, I guess, of going with the smaller lot on Kelly Lane is that you would potentially limit and or eliminate the FAR variance and the coverage variance with regard to the two-family by making it a little larger. But, you know, like I say, I don't think anybody will ever notice. And when you look at the size of the houses, I mean, if you take a look at the house on the corner of Holmes and Monroe, and you look at the coverage that you have there between the two-family house and the garage, and you look at the other one on the corner of Kelly Lane and Holmes Street, and you know, you could, not that we did the math, but if you look at it, there's nobody that's in compliance, at least not on this section. So, you know, whatever the board thinks is more preferable, my client will go along with. I mean, me personally, I think I like the idea of the 5,000 square foot lots, because, you know, houses come and go, but lots, you know, presumably are not going to disappear. And I think it's better to have lots that are more harmonious with what's out there.
Yeah, we did.
So perhaps, you know, we can get some input from,
Yeah.
Pedo, maybe from a planning perspective. You can enlighten us as to what he thinks from a planning perspective would be
What do you
a better
think?
alternative.
Yeah, I mean, as I noted in our report, I did, ask for details related to kind of the decision-making process and how the applicant came to the lot configuration as presented. It is kind of a recommendation that we had to, evaluate and adjust the lot line configuration so that the two-family dwelling does have more lot area, so that is closer conforming in this condition. But again, I do, given the pattern of development and the other 5,000 square foot lots in the area, as Mr. Shepherd stated, I think there is a case to be made that, perhaps 5,000 square feet could also be a suitable lot size as well to strive for. So I think it really is up to the discretion of the board. However, I would say that given the two-family, presence on Monroe Street and the new requirement for the conditional use of minimum lot area, 9,000 square feet, it would probably be beneficial to have a larger lot size for the two-family.
Okay. No problem. Any board opinions on that? I mean, what's that? Okay, yes. Why don't we do that? Let's open it to the public and let's get their input here on this. So let's open it to the public. Now, this is for your opinions and what you think, okay? Let's just try to keep it not, I won't put a limit on time, but if we can try not to be saying the same thing, I'd really appreciate it. So anyone wants to come forward?
Do you like the photo that they're looking at?
No, that's okay. I actually used to live at 318 Monroe myself, very familiar with the property. I just want to point out
Could you just
that,
state your name?
oh, I'm sorry, my name is Melissa DeSalvo. I live on Reservoir Drive now. Sorry for looking at my phone, but it's where my notes are. Okay, so the applicant's asking for the 10 variances without construction plans, which means we know that they could come back, but ultimately that the variances will be handed off to whoever buys the property in the future. What does this do? It increases the property value of those two lots. Clearly, the objective here is to make money. It is not for the benefit of the community. It is to develop. We recently updated our zoning and land use ordinance to avoid these exact kinds of situations. The goal of that was to improve the quality and character of our neighborhoods. And if we're serious about that, then we shouldn't be approving a subdivision without seeing construction plans. You can put a home on that lot currently that can fill the entire space without subdividing. I just hope that the planning board sees this for what it is. This isn't, let's go back to 1908 this is a plan to develop this area. They're going to need a lot of impervious coverage. There's no driveways. There's nowhere to park. These neighbors are gonna feel the squeeze as soon as this is approved, and plans are gonna be put in place and put before you to approve it. It's a tight area. It's very tight. And there's a lot of flooding back there. Kelly Lane floods. What is gonna happen when you start putting in driveways? When you start increasing the buildable area for that it's a shed. Kelly Lane is the size of a 2-car garage. There's ways to improve the community and the space without subdividing this lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Chairman, it seems that this is morphing into the public participation section, which is fine.
Right, is
but
that,
I didn't
right,
get-
hold on one
I didn't-
second.
I didn't see an answer to your question, but nonetheless.
No, go, I mean, yeah,
That's
let's,
fine.
let's
I mean, it's
get
fine.
through
I think
this and then
morph-
we can
I think
figure it out.
morph.
Yes.
I currently live on the property. I also do this for a living. I do multiple subdivisions a year. And so I have this handy dandy little book that I refer to. I have some other things to go through, but I thought this was a great section of the book. I'm sure you guys know this. It's also for the members of the back of the community.
Which house do you live in?
I live in Green, probably.
Okay.
First, yeah, the passage from my land use book and zoning book, it clearly of few, 1 to 3, well-justified variances are usually acceptable, especially if they address minor deviations like lot size setbacks or frontage requirements without drastically altering the intent of zoning laws. More than 3 variances may start raising red flags, especially if they significantly change density, land use, or infrastructure demands. Excessive variances could indicate that the proposed design is incompatible with zoning laws and might face opposition from planning boards or the community and have negative impact. They're asking for a D3 variance, especially used. Why are they asking for a D3? Well, it's technically the only prayer that they have, and you can hear it because essentially what they're saying is they'll take whatever they can get. They're not going to get a C2. They can't show hardship. They're not going to get a D3. They're not going to get a D4 because they're way over the maximum floor, and the D4 is that allocates for up to 15% over the lot area. That's also not given the fact, as Missy brought up, that there is no construction plan. So moving forward, how many more variances come after that? We have impervious coverage we haven't tackled. We haven't tackled on-site parking. They're cherry picking the grandfather laws. Oh, they want the on-street parking, but we don't want some of this. We'll take some of that, but we won't take some of this. We could have a conversation. I mean, there's probably 15, 16 variances that wind up here in the long run. I mean, we don't have all night. We could go through this all night. I mean, I'm just covering the basics on that. You guys know the laws. I'm just bringing them to light in front of everybody in the community because it seems like the whole neighborhood's here.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hello, Ashley Carrion. So I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what Missy had mentioned about Kelly Lane being the size of a 2-car garage. I can testify to that because I live there with a child and 2 dogs. It is a very small home. Now, in our master plan, which we are supposed to try to follow and uphold, we want to avoid subdividing, overdeveloping, hence the change to our ordinance on minimum lot sizes, so forth. So now, as an architect, I'm going to say if this property remains as a single family or a single lot, Kelly Lane, it gives you opportunity to have a garage and parking at the home on Monroe Street. So you have to think in the future, like, how do we want this property to be developed? We would want it as a single family home that does not, you know, overcrowd the lane and the neighborhood. So in my opinion, that's what we should be shooting for based on what our master plan is guiding us to do. And quite frankly, the math isn't mathing. The lots are too small. We don't want lots smaller than our minimum lot requirements, period.
Hi there. My name is Carol Morikoff. I live around the corner on Madison Street. Technically speaking, I'm not part of this brouhaha that's today, but I must admit, your meetings are far more entertaining than I thought they would be.
From every month.
This being as it may, I am by nature an optimist, and I like to think the best of everybody and everything. So when the fellow says that he's not planning on building or it's not going to materially change things, I think perhaps he deserves the benefit of the doubt. But then I think that whoever had the bright idea to create that monstrosity right around the corner at Madison and, I'm sorry, Monroe, Washington, probably had good ideas too, and told you that they were going to build a big, beautiful gas station, et cetera. No, they did not, and you have the mess that's sitting there now. So please, before you let loose in motion something that might not turn out as well as we all would like to hope today, let's not. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else from the public?
All the information in regards to the lane. Once again, my name is Lori Sula. I live at 314 Kelly Lane. Are you all aware that there is a right-of-way, a easement? Maybe you don't know.
No.
Okay, so all of the houses on Kelly Lane. Sorry. So there's 314 Kelly Lane, 3 Kelly Lane, 315 Kelly Lane, and 319 Kelly Lane that have all signed a right-of-way easement. It is on file. I only have one copy.
That's fine.
It is on file with the town. I made sure when I bought my property, I am on Kelly Lane. I looked at the property and thought to myself, okay, who's responsible for snow removal? What happens to the garbage cans? All that kind of stuff. And I soon found out there's a right-of-way easement. It says in there that it is a road. We are all to agree that the space between and adjacent to our properties, adjoining our properties, is common and shared as the lane. That it has to be free from obstruction, so there needs to be no cars parked on the lane. The gentleman earlier had testified that there's no frontage to the property of 319 Kelly Lane. I moved in 2011. At the time, I saw where my property line was, and there's portions of the lane that I actually own the entire width of the lane. I wouldn't park my car in front of my house, which I own the entire lane in that width, because it would prevent 319 from accessing the property. However, 319 is parking in front of the house. I can't back out of my property. They have two, sometimes 3 cars parked in front of the property. There's no frontage to the property. It's all the lane. That's all adjacent to my property. I have pictures that I can show you. You can keep all of these pictures. I'll start some on this side, put some over here. This is all the lane, and these are cars parked on it. This is cars not parked on the lane, but parked where the water main break was. And this is my property that I own, and no cars on the lane. You can turn them around, there's notes on the back if you wish. I started
Question.
emailing
What?
I started emailing the.
Right. So hold on,
Yeah, let's,
Mr. Attorney.
yeah, let's kind of clarify something.
Okay.
And please understand, I'm not in any way challenging you. I'm just trying to get information
Sure.
from you. So these documents that you provided us in the first instance, they reflect 2 different dates. When did you actually acquire your property?
2011, and the one underneath is the most recent one, the
2009.
2009. But this wordage was a little bit easier to read. and it included more, and I honestly, the wordage with all of that is on the back of my deed, and I didn't want to bring my deed in. And my
Okay.
photocopy wasn't.
Okay, but
So that's why I brought that one for the wordage of it, so that you understand
Yeah.
that it's all of the property that's in front of our property, so that we can access our driveways and our properties. So there is no parking in
Okay.
front of.
Can I just-
the
I
lane.
have a
but we need to make sure we're being fair to everyone.
Yeah.
This is why I'm asking these questions. Were you represented by counsel
Yeah.
at the time that you
It's
came
connected
into?
to my, it's connected to my deed. So when I bought my property.
Bought your
it
house.
Says that I must, and that's why I had to pay for the water main break on 319. Otherwise, I wouldn't have
Okay.
paid for their water main break.
But
So
you're,
like, we're responsible for the maintenance of the lane. We are responsible, all shared together.
So
The
can I
maintenance of
have
the
a
main-
question? I just.
yeah, Steve, let's.
I have a question. Mr. Shepis, is your client signatory to this agreement?
No, he's not, right? No, he's not.
Why was I when I purchased my house?
I don't know.
That's why, unfortunately, you
I don't know,
can't.
and that's what just,
Well, ma'am, see what the problem is, just to give you a, how would you do it type of way? This is kind of incomplete. And it puts you in an awful position to, in essence, provide testimony in an area that you're probably not an attorney, right?
No, I'm not, but I've paid for the water main break.
no, I
Yeah, no,
understand that.
that's not that.
Right, I understand. The
With
issue
respect, that's
is,
not the issue.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't know to what extent this document
I know.
remains effective, right? But the town has copies of lots of documents.
So when I went to the town and I said, tell me about Kelly Lane, they said there's a right of way easement.
So-
They informed me of everything
Right,
on Kelly
so-
Lane. They took out the book, they showed me.
we understand. But the problem we've got is we're not enforcers here. We're not the code enforcers.
I know.
We can't, if,
The whole
Yeah.
time.
right, we're, that's not our place. I
Yeah.
understand and I sympathize with you,
But the power of this board doesn't extend in that particular way.
So the photograph where I'm standing in front of my house and I own the whole width of the property, I can just park my car there. Okay,
yes.
and block everybody
not gonna
from
do
getting
those
to their.
Ma'am,
We don't know.
ma'am, with respect.
Right.
That's just, you're giving an opinion. Do not attribute what you just did to this board. The board hasn't made any determination about your legal interests. et
Yeah,
cetera.
but I have a right of way easement and nobody's helping me. So if nobody else is upholding the easement, then I don't have to uphold the easement.
So it's not our board. We can't do anything about that.
Can anybody? Because I've gone to the
I-
police, I've gone to the codes.
Have you gone to the,
Sure.
I
Have you
would go
gone
to
the
the,
governing.
I would
body?
go into the governing body,
Who's the governing body?
the mayor and the councilman. They have a
They've
meeting.
changed over the years. I've sent quite a few of the
I-
mayor's letters.
I would go again. Yes, we'll allow you.
Based on what she presented to you and it's incomplete information and, you know, who's parking where is not for this board, but
Correct.
regardless, the information that she is trying to present, being that there is an easement, no frontage, it kind of seems like a very gray area. Wouldn't that kind of trigger you guys to do a little bit more due diligence to understand the property more before you agree to subdivide?
It's certainly something we'll take into consideration.
Okay,
We hear the public here. We're hearing.
No, I understand.
Okay.
So that's why it just seems there's some gray area that we all don't have answers to, which makes it, you know, hard to be able to make a decision on a
Yes.
property that we're not all familiar with.
Yes.
Thank you.
Evening, Glenn Baker, 32 Dorian Road and various other properties in town. The owner or co-owner said that they were in this for an investment, right? And I think you guys have such a task because you have to pick something somewhat years down the road, right? So that are gonna come, so it's not easy. I guess the subject property, I'm guessing is somewhere the value of it's in the 500s, 515 for the Monroe Street side. And the rental rates should be around $2,300 a month or so for those properties. My understanding is that those rental rates are extraordinarily below that, which as an investor myself, that's a bad investment unless I had another intent. And I just want to make that known that that intent is what we're talking about here. We can't predict the future, but certainly the present tells us something that the future is going to happen. Thank you.
Michael Sutton, 319 Kelly Lane. Yes, I did. Yeah, so I live on the property, and what I want to talk about is the impervious coverage, because there's been a big problem in that yard since I moved in. And the previous owner, years ago, he excavated the whole backyard because it always flooded. The whole area floods. As the driveway is always a problem, and the side of the house is always just like a river whenever it floods. And the backyard, the previous owner excavated a couple feet. He put over a foot of gravel, more topsoil. And when I was actually fixing the fire pit that's in the backyard, I saw, there was that gravel's there. So I'm afraid if there was more development on that land, I don't see, there shouldn't be any more impervious coverage on that land. And the house was actually offered to me at one point when Shaquille Muhammad first purchased the house. He was telling me right away it was subdivided or he told me own it outright, you could easily subdivide, it wouldn't be a problem. So I was considering buying the house. But then when I looked around, first of all, it's got really bad bones. The foundation is leaking, like everything, you put a marble anywhere in the house, it rolls to the center. It's falling apart. It's not in good condition. So it desperately needs a renovation. But what I actually think would be the best after thinking about, I'm in construction, I was thinking about this property, like what would be best? And actually what another woman, Ashley, brought up, what would be the perfect would be a one-family house, and that should just be a garage back there or parking. But really, if you make it two separate units and somebody tries to develop more, because the only thing to do with that house for Anthony Kelly land is really knock it down, honestly. It's just like nothing like worth holding on to there. It has one spot to park a car. And what makes sense is to not expand on that property. And I can't imagine anyone buying that property and not want to, it's an investment, make money on it, but build something nicer. So I don't think that this should go through to split this lot.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Seeing no one, I'll close it to the public. Some board discussion. Yay.
I would like to point.
Yes, you can finish up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just a couple of things.
Yes.
And the first thing I want to bring to your attention is the certification of the zoning use history. We did do a detailed title investigation, and the investigation disclosed that the ownership and fee of Kelly Lane is still in the name of James Holmes, the original developer of the area. He deeded the properties to the sideline and he retained ownership. And then in one of the deeds that came out of him, they referenced this alley as being a right of way. So he established an easement right of way for all the properties that are contiguous, and that's the way it's been used. So as far as ownership, that's what our search disclosed. All the lots pull to the sideline, 15-foot gap referenced as the alley. And then with regard to your zoning, and there was a lot of helpful information, some of it was irrelevant. But I want to draw your attention to section 376 of your ordinance, and it's entitled Principal Building. This is what it says. No lot shall contain more than one principal building except as follows. And there's a series of exceptions. Apartments, townhouses, low and moderate income housing, housing for the elderly, hereinafter permitted in the chapter, design shopping centers, permitted B3 district, principal buildings in the C1, C2, I1, and I2 districts, and it has a series of provisos. And then it goes, buildings must conform with the requirements. So it has a whole list of things in those zones. So what I gleaned from your ordinance, and I'm sure your planner agrees with me and your attorney, is that your ordinance does not permit two principal single-family dwellings on one lot. And that if we were to come before you with a vacant lot and say, we think this would be a great idea to have two houses on one lot, one facing one street and one facing the other. So we would like a D1 variance to have a use that's not principal use, it's not permitted in the zone. I would submit to you, we wouldn't be able to come up with proofs. because such a proof or a D1 variance would be so opposed to your master plan and your zoning that you couldn't grant it. Now, the reason that I went into the history of how these lots existed, and I'll give you my humble opinion, is I believe these lots were improperly merged when they were merged. Now, why they were merged? Now, sometimes for taxing purposes, tax assessors lump things together, and in this particular instance, somewhere after 1930, these lots were combined for taxing purposes. And as you can see from Exhibit F on the zoning use history exhibit, I think it was A2, the tax map showed them as two lots. And then somewhere along the line, they were merged. And when I went through the case law, which I shared with your attorney, it's clear on these front to back lots that, especially with principal structures. And you know, it's funny, as you read Lochner from the Supreme Court, it's inferred that at least one of the two lots is vacant. Because in Lochner, they were vacant lots. Somebody had a vacant lot next to their home and they wanted to then build on it. A neighbor opposed it and said, hey, wait, that merged for zoning purposes because it's common ownership. And the Supreme Court agreed with the neighbor and basically announced this lot merge or automatic merger doctrine. And then as a result, we basically have these undersized combined lots that were created prior to the 53 Planning Act as being combined to one lot. But this here merged somewhere along the line with two houses. So clearly I would point this out as a mistake. Now, so what do we do with this mistake? We could either leave two houses on one lot, which is acrimonious to your zone plan. But then when you look at Exhibit A2, we have the list of all of the lot area. And you compare that to what we're proposing. Now, if you go with 5,000 square foot lot, I think we're more in compliance with what this is. But this A2 with all of these lot area comparisons and the multitude of two-family houses, I mean, clearly when you look at what's out there and the lot sizes and you compare what we're proposing to what exists in the pattern of development, there can clearly be no substantial negative impact to the neighborhood because most of the lots are of the size that we're proposing. And many, if not all, most of the lots, I should say, are two-family. And the reason being presumably is because two-family houses were permitted at the time and multiple family houses were permitted. And you saw that density permitted 18 units per acre back then in the from up till 1939. And when you look at the homes based on all of the pictures that are on A2, you can see the vast majority of these houses were all built before World War II. So this is why it happened. So the mystery is solved. How did two houses end up on one lot? They were built prior to 1930 and you have.
Question.
Yeah.
For you. So I guess the question, I mean, even if we were to consider this, I'm not saying we were to consider this. I guess one of the questions is where that lot line should be. And you're here, you're going for a D variance here. Is there a reason why we don't have a planner to help us understand this from your side?
You know, certainly if the board wants to hear from a planner, I honestly didn't think that there was anything that a planner could share with you with regard to the statutory criteria for D3 variance. Then I could share with you from a legal standpoint. And I would say for the D3, if you're looking at the conditions of the ordinance, you have to have 9,000 square feet. Well, look at the pattern of development that I show you on A2. Most of the lots are 5,000 square feet. And how could this use suit this particular size lot based on what your ordinance now requires of 9,000 square feet? The fact that it's been there since 1930, I mean, we're coming up on 100 years of that thing being there. So when you drive by this property, either in a year from now or whatever, whether the board approves it or not, you're not going to notice anything different from what's there today. And as a result, I mean, clearly the lot has sustained itself either when it was a little larger or where it is now with two houses on it, in a manner that doesn't impact the zone plan and the zoning ordinance, considering the vast amount of nonconformities around it. Now, if the board would like to hear from a licensed professional planner, we can certainly come back at a date in the not too distant future and present somebody that will address that aspect of the elements. But it seemed to me most of the relief that we're requesting regards non-conforming conditions regarding setback. The coverage is what it is. I mean, we're not changing anything. And then with regard to your variance for floor area ratio, you see this house is two families no larger than any of the other two families on the block, and the lots are harmonious. But that being said, there's two schools of thought. You know, one, the facts speak to themselves. The other, if you want to hear somebody with a license other than mine, opine on the topic, we're certainly open to that, should the board feel that it's necessary.
Okay.
I mean, I'm also open to hearing from your planner as to whether he believes that the proofs are there or whether he has any specific questions. We went through a lot of effort to create
Yeah,
them too,
I understand.
in order to justify it.
I understand.
I think you hurt his feelings. when you said it.
I know. I,
It's on
you know,
the record, right?
Oh, yeah.
I have to tread lightly. And I don't mean to.
I just don't know where your
say-
sidekick was.
You know, when we're not building it.
Yes.
It struck me as
Yes.
unnecessary, but of course, if you. feel
Well,
it's
I mean,
necessary, then it
you
is.
know, obviously, there's people, the concern, well, at least what I'm hearing is there's a concern about the expand, I mean, the house up front, you're not gonna be able to expand that. The house in the back, you know, with the layout in the middle, you could expand that.
Well-
You've got more room.
One way you could limit that is if you wanted to go back to the original lot lines, that would decrease the coverage possibility.
Right.
And likewise, it would limit the ability to build towards the rear, because then you'd be dealing with a rear yard setback. And then, of course, anything that happens there would require relief.
You would have to come back.
We'd have to come back.
And you would have to solve issues like parking
That's right,
and
and
flooding,
drainage.
and all those issues would have to get solved
Correct.
to get approved.
That's correct.
Right. If we do nothing, it's gonna stay exactly how it is.
Correct. I mean, what drives this is the fact that you have something that is so strikingly dissimilar from what's in the neighborhood, two houses on one lot. In all of our experience in looking at this, there's not a single situation that's comparable to this in this block 75. And I don't know of anything else in the area. I mean, I've seen this before, but usually when you see two houses on one lot, it's one house on one side and then one like a smaller house, like to the right or something like that. I just have not seen it. I haven't seen it here in the town.
Across the street all the time.
Yeah.
But-
Hold on, excuse
No.
me, everyone, one at a time, please.
Wait,
I'll leave that to your personal knowledge. We have
Wait,
something
wait.
that I believe is different than.
we close it to the public. Hold on, I can't just reopen it. I might be able to. Hold on, I'm not saying no. I just want to make sure I can. Can I have another person talk?
You could.
Okay, I'm in a good mood.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't want to cut anybody off.
I appreciate that. There was no information I couldn't comment on before. You commented there were no other houses like it, two houses on a lot, or a few, I don't remember.
Well, I said in this block 75, our investigation did not disclose any other lot that had two principal structures.
Except the house next to mine and two houses after that.
Which street are you on?
I'm across the street from my road.
Well, that's, I don't think you're in the same block. We
Yes,
only,
later, my house faces Monroe 318.
yeah, but you're on the opposite.
Yes.
When I say block, I don't mean like we're back in
means
the
that-
Bronx playing up against stoop ball on the steps. I mean,
Yeah, it
it's-
means legal.
It's in the same perimeter. See, we studied the perimeter from Monroe to Holmes, to.
Monroe, Holmes, Old Boonton,
Old
and
Boonton.
Lathrop.
Yeah, that's the block. It's listed in block 75. We didn't study the whole thing. Just the block.
I'm just across the street.
Yeah, but it's not the tax block. I should say the tax block.
That's clear, just to be honest, but,
Yep.
so around there are other houses, there are other lots with two houses, that's clear. I
Okay.
don't make it seem, okay, that's just sounding good. You made it seem like there were none.
But not on this block.
Exactly.
Okay, we got it. Okay. What are we thinking, board?
Well, we just,
I only opened it to one
one
person.
person.
You shut up.
Now, I would reiterate, if you want to have a planner, we'll come back next month or a month after with a plan.
Yes, I would.
I could suggest, I think it might be beneficial for, the applicant to prepare, details as far as with respect to the coverage, bulk changes or adjustments in the alternative lot configuration scenario that they present to you. So that the board be better advised the degree of deviation. on the
Yes.
alternative scenario. And I do think there would also be a benefit for it to be,
I agree with you.
I just don't hear a positive and negative
Yeah,
criteria.
Yeah.
I think,
At least for the completeness of the
Excuse me,
record.
ma'am. Just,
no,
At least for the completeness of the record.
yes.
I think it
Yeah.
would be beneficial for our deliberations and ultimately whatever the decision is
Understood.
made, to hear the planning testimony.
Understand.
And to present the scenarios with the various.
Of the two
perspectives.
scenarios, so we could see the coverages and what
Understood.
that would be and what that would allow and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, well, that being said, then
Yes,
I would ask that this matter be carried to your next available meeting with notice preserved, and then we will reappear at a date in the future satisfying these additional.
yep.
Next meeting is the 9th.
The 9th of May. No, April. You're skipping a month.
I
Is
move
that
the,
available, Ms. Clements?
As of now,
I always turn to the board secretary because she really runs everything.
It's available.
oh, I don't, I just sit here. Yes, April 9th is available.
I move the application be carried to April 9th without further notice.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
To the
it's
degree
carried.
that the board needs an extension of time to act, I could send to an extension of time for act until May 31st, 2025.
Yes, thank you.
So the public, what you ought to do, if you had friends who couldn't make it tonight, there's not going to be an official renotice in the newspaper or the like. So you really should endeavor to let your friends know that there is a new date for the continuation of this here.
Okay, all right.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, do we have anything else? I don't believe we do.
I don't think
So we have a motion to adjourn.
The move, Brewer.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.